Listen carefully, because manipulators don't start with lies. They start with questions, questions that sound harmless, questions that feel normal, but underneath, they're gathering intel, reading your weaknesses, and shaping a reality where you lose and they win. Today, I'm giving you the advanced version: 5 questions liars ask to manipulate you. 2. 0. The upgraded playbook of psychological predators. Why are you overreacting? This question is not curiosity. It's a weapon. Liars use it to flip the script to make your accurate instincts look like emotional instability. They want you to question your own judgment, because the moment you doubt yourself, they win. A confident person says, "I'm not overreacting. I'm responding to something that feels wrong." Set the line, keep it firm. "Can't you just trust me?" This one is guilt disguised as intimacy. People who are honest don't demand trust. They earn it, but manipulators want to bypass accountability. This question pressures you to ignore the red flags and hand over your boundaries. Don't fall for it. You can trust someone and verify their actions. That's not distrust, that's wisdom. Who told you that? And notice this: liars don't ask what you know. They ask where you got the information, because they're not trying to clear the truth, they're trying to control the source. This question is strategic. It helps them figure out who to silence, intimidate, or manipulate next. Never reveal your sources, just state your facts. What do you want me to say? This question looks cooperative, but it's pure manipulation. Instead of taking responsibility, they push the burden back on you. Now you must guide them. You must fix the situation. You must accept whatever half-truth they give you. Don't answer this question. Instead say what's true. That's all I want. Force them to stand in their own words. Why would I lie to you? This is the liar's favorite shield, a question designed to make you feel guilty for even doubting them. But remember, liars rely on credibility. They rely on your belief. They rely on your hesitation. The more they ask this question, the more likely it is they have something to hide. Respond with calm strength. That's not the point. I'm checking the facts. Because truth doesn't fear questions, only lies do. Liars don't manipulate you with loud moves. They manipulate you with subtle questions. Questions designed to shift blame, weaken your confidence, and twist reality in their favor. But once you recognize these tactics, the game changes. You step back into power. You stop explaining, defending, justifying, and you start observing. When someone tries to manipulate you with these questions, remember this truth: your awareness is your protection. Your clarity is your weapon, and your boundaries are non-negotiable. Liars use targeted questions to shift blame and confuse your instincts. And this tactic works because most people are trained from childhood to answer questions automatically. When someone asks you something, you respond out of habit. Manipulators know this, and they weaponize that natural reflex. They don't start with accusations. They start with subtle, seemingly innocent questions designed to put you on the defensive, questions that make you explain yourself, justify your feelings, and doubt your intuition. The moment you move from observer to defender, they gain psychological leverage. Their goal isn't information, it's control, and questions are the fastest way to take it. A liar studies you long before you notice them. They watch how you react, how quickly you try to fix things, how much you want to be understood, and especially how uncomfortable you become when someone challenges your emotions. So they craft questions that gently poke at those weak spots. Questions like, "Are you sure that's what happened?" Or "Why would you think something like that?" seem harmless, but their purpose is to make you second, guess yourself. Once you start doubting your perception, you become easier to steer. When your internal certainty wavers, their narrative becomes easier to accept. Manipulators thrive in the space between what you feel and what you believe you're allowed to feel. They also use targeted questions to switch the spotlight off themselves. Suppose they are the one who created the problem, acted dishonestly, or crossed a boundary. Instead of answering for their behavior, they toss out a quick question like, "Why are you bringing this up now?" Or "What do you want me to say?" Suddenly the conversation is no longer about what they did. It's about your timing, your tone, your expectations. That's how blame shifts. It doesn't shift through shouting. It shifts through misdirection. The actual issue disappears, buried under the weight of your need to justify your reaction. When you explain yourself, they escape accountability, and manipulators are masters at disguising their questions as concern. They'll ask, "Are you okay? You seem stressed," right at the moment you're about to confront them. It sounds caring, but it's strategically placed to soften you and divert the conversation. If they can get you to talk about your emotions instead of their actions, they win. They want your attention turned inward, not outward. If you're busy analyzing what's wrong with you, you won't focus on what's wrong with them. These questions are not accidental. They are calculated pressure points. Another tactic liars use is framing their questions to make you feel irrational. "Why would you think I'd lie?" Or "Does this really seem like a big deal to you?" are designed to push you into a corner where the only way out is to defend your emotional intelligence. Now the conversation becomes about whether you're being logical, not about whether they're being truthful. They turn your vigilance into a flaw. The more you struggle to explain why you felt something was off, the more they gain emotional ground. You start to wonder if you're misinterpreting things, if you're being dramatic, if you're imagining problems. That confusion is exactly what they want. Liars also ask questions that force you into revealing what you know. Who told you that? Where did you hear this? What exactly did they say? These questions aren't about clarifying the truth. They're reconnaissance. They're gathering data to protect themselves. If they know your source, they know who to manipulate next. If they know how much you know, they can tailor their next lie accordingly. These questions help them map the battlefield. They can decide whether to deny everything, shift the story, or charm their way out of trouble. The less you reveal, the more unstable their strategy becomes. That's why they push for details through questions disguised as confusion or innocence. Some of their most manipulative questions are the ones that make you responsible for their comfort. "Do you really think I'd hurt you on purpose?" Or "Don't you trust me?" These questions put you in the position of comforting the very person who caused the discomfort. Instead of addressing what they did, you end up reassuring them, easing their guilt, and smoothing the relationship so conflict disappears. But it doesn't disappear, it just gets buried, and any issue that gets buried becomes a weapon they can reuse later. Manipulators depend on your desire to maintain peace. They use it to steer your emotions, your reactions, and your choices. Every time a liar asks you a targeted question, they're guiding the narrative. They're sculpting your perception of the situation. They're positioning themselves as the reasonable one and you as the reactive one. The more you answer, the more power shifts in their direction. Answering their questions keeps you in their frame, and that frame is designed to make you doubt yourself. When you doubt yourself, you lose clarity. When you lose clarity, you lose strength. When you lose strength, you bend. That's what manipulators want. You're bending, not you're breaking. You're far more useful to them flexible and confused than you are broken and done. Recognizing this tactic isn't about becoming suspicious of every question you hear. It's about staying aware of the intention behind the question. Does the question illuminate truth, or does it distort it? Does it bring clarity, or does it create confusion? Does it hold them accountable, or does it put you on trial? Liars use questions to pull you out of your center. They use them to make you feel defensive, emotional, guilty, or unsure. They rely on your instinct to explain yourself. They rely on your need to be understood. They rely on the fact that you believe honesty comes through discussion, when in reality, manipulation comes through the same door. Any question that pressures you to doubt yourself is a manipulation tactic, and it works because self-doubt is one of the easiest emotional levers to pull. Most people want to appear reasonable, calm, fair, and emotionally balanced. When someone questions those qualities, even subtly, it triggers a natural instinct to justify who you are. Manipulators understand this. They know that if they can get you to defend your character instead of addressing their behavior, they can control the direction of the entire conversation. Doubt becomes the doorway they enter through, and once they're inside, they rearrange the entire reality to benefit themselves. These kinds of questions don't arrive with flashing lights. They come wrapped in politeness, softness, even concern. They sound like, "Are you sure you're not taking this too personally?" Or maybe you're just misunderstanding things. The tone is gentle, but the impact is sharp. They're not asking for clarity. They're planting seeds. Seeds that grow into uncertainty, Seeds that make you wonder if you misread the situation, if your emotions are too strong, if you're being unfair, or if your instincts are misleading you. The moment these thoughts appear, you start negotiating with yourself instead of confronting the person in front of you. That internal battle is exactly what they want. Manipulators use these questions because self-doubt weakens your conviction. Without conviction, your boundaries soften, you hesitate, you step back instead of stepping forward, you question your memory, your feelings, your reasoning, and even your right to feel a certain way. When your internal certainty collapses, you become easier to persuade. A manipulator doesn't need to overpower you. They just need to destabilize your confidence. That tiny crack is enough for them to start reshaping your perspective in their favor. Another form of self-doubt questions comes disguised as rationality. Let's be logical about this, or do you have proof? These aren't requests for facts. They're challenges to your emotional intelligence. When someone asks questions like these in moments where emotional clarity is what matters, not evidence, what they're really doing is discrediting your intuitive awareness. They make you feel like your instincts aren't valid unless backed up by something external. But intuition doesn't operate on evidence. It operates on patterns, changes in tone, inconsistencies, and unconscious signals. Manipulators know this, which is why they attack the one thing that could expose them, your internal warning system. Self-doubt questions also shift responsibility. Instead of them explaining why their behavior was questionable, you end up explaining why you felt uncomfortable. Instead of them owning their actions, you're defending your emotional response. This switch gives them control over the story. They're no longer on the defensive. You are. And once you step onto that defensive field, they start guiding the tempo. They ask more questions, each one more targeted, each one designed to push you further away from your original point. Their goal is to make you forget what you were addressing in the first place. In the confusion, they regain their power. Some manipulators use questions that sound almost supportive. I just want to understand, why does this bother you so much? Or you know I care, so why would you assume something negative? These questions are framed as emotional closeness, but the intent is to make you believe the problem lies in your sensitivity, not in their behavior. This tactic is particularly effective because it taps into your desire to maintain harmony. Most people don't want to be seen as overly sensitive or difficult, so when someone gently questions their emotional response, they try to soften it. They try to adjust, but by doing that, they're adjusting away from their truth and toward a version of reality shaped by the manipulator. Another powerful tool in the manipulator's arsenal is the question that makes you feel irrational. Why are you being like this, or is this really worth getting upset over? These questions imply that your reaction is disproportionate. They place the burden on you to justify your emotions, and when you're put in that position, you often start minimizing your own experience. You tell yourself it's not a big deal, that maybe you misinterpreted something, that perhaps you're making assumptions. Every time you shrink your perspective to fit their framing, they gain more influence over how you see the situation. Manipulators also use self-doubt questions to create dependence. If you're not sure about this, why don't you just trust me? This pushes you to rely on their interpretation rather than your own. It trains you to believe that your internal compass is unreliable and that you need them to navigate situations. Over time, this can become deeply damaging. You begin disconnecting from your instincts, your independence weakens, and you become more vulnerable to their influence. Some questions aim to confuse your identity. I thought you were stronger than this, or you're usually so reasonable. What's going on with you today? These questions strike at your sense of self. They make you feel inconsistent, unstable, and unsure of who you are in the moment. When your identity feels shaky, you're more likely to retreat to second, guess your stance, and to let them lead. Manipulators know that if they can make you feel inconsistent, they can control the narrative because you'll be too busy trying to regain emotional footing. The most dangerous thing about these self-doubt questions is that they sound normal, they don't raise alarms, they make you question yourself quietly, internally. You don't realize the manipulation until you're already defending yourself, already apologizing for something you shouldn't apologize for, already adjusting to make the other person more comfortable. That's how subtle the tactic is. It doesn't confront your confidence directly. It erodes it slowly, almost invisibly, and the moment yourself, doubt becomes louder than your instincts, the manipulator gains complete access to shape your decisions, reactions, and beliefs. Truth stands alone, only lies need persuasion, guilt, or emotional force, and this is one of the clearest ways to recognize manipulation in real time. When someone is telling the truth, they don't need to convince you with theatrics. They don't need to twist your feelings, overwhelm you with explanations, or pressure you into believing them. Truth is steady, it's calm, it doesn't chase validation because it doesn't depend on it. A truthful person can let the facts speak for themselves. A liar can't. A liar needs your belief to survive, so they push, pull, and prod until you begin to question your own perception. That emotional pressure isn't accidental, it's the architecture of deception. A truthful person doesn't panic when questioned. They don't react with outrage when you ask for clarity. They don't use phrases like, "How could you think this of me?" or "After everything I've done for you." These emotional hooks are tools meant to hijack your empathy. When someone attempts to make you feel guilty for wanting answers, they're not defending truth, they're defending a lie. Guilt becomes the distraction, a smokescreen pulled over your eyes so you stop looking at the inconsistencies. A manipulator doesn't want you to evaluate the facts. They want you to evaluate your loyalty, your kindness, your sense of fairness, and once you turn inward, you stop holding them accountable. Lies rely heavily on emotional force because emotional reactions are faster than logical ones. If the liar can overwhelm you emotionally, through anger, tears, defensiveness, or moral superiority, they keep you from thinking clearly. They create urgency where none exists. They make the situation feel explosive, so you're too busy managing their emotional state to question their story. This is why manipulators often escalate situations the moment they feel exposed. They raise their voice, cry, or withdraw dramatically. These are strategies, not feelings. They use emotional intensity to drown out the parts of you that recognize the truth. Truth doesn't need intensity. Truth doesn't need pressure. Someone who is being honest can sit in silence, answer simply, and allow you the space to process. They're not afraid of your thoughts. They're not afraid of your conclusions. They let you arrive at your understanding without forcing the path. This is what makes truth powerful. It doesn't demand belief, it just exists, but lies can't survive without constant reinforcement. A liar must maintain the story, patch the holes, cover the cracks, and keep your attention away from the inconsistencies. That level of maintenance requires manipulation, and manipulation requires emotional force. A person lying to you will often oversell. Their explanations become too long, too dramatic, too detailed, or too perfect. They say things that don't match the situation, exaggerate their innocence, or paint themselves as the victim. They try to create a narrative so emotionally compelling that you stop analyzing it logically. Overselling is one of the biggest signs of deception. Truth is simple, lies are complicated. And any explanation that tries too hard to make you feel something, sympathy, guilt, shame, responsibility, is usually covering something. You'll also notice that lies often come with urgency. "You need to believe me right now. We don't have time for this. I can't go through this again." Urgency is a tactic used to stop you from thinking. When someone pressures you to decide immediately, without reflection, without analysis, they are trying to control your psychological state. Truth does not require urgency. It can withstand pause, it can withstand silence, it can withstand scrutiny. Lies crumble under all three, so manipulators scramble to keep you from slowing down long enough to see clearly. Another tactic used to uphold lies is moral condemnation. "How dare you accuse me? I thought you trusted me. You're being paranoid." These statements are designed to make you feel like the villain for even questioning them. They attack your character instead of addressing the issue. But truth can handle questions. It doesn't need to shame you into silence. It doesn't need to protect itself by attacking you. Lies, on the other hand, depend on your silence. They depend on your fear of being wrong, fear of conflict, fear of hurting someone's feelings. Manipulators weaponize your kindness because kindness makes you hesitate, and hesitation gives lies time to grow stronger. Lies also rely on confusion. They twist timelines, mix details, jump from topic to topic, or drown you in explanations. The goal is to overwhelm your mental clarity so you can't separate what's relevant from what's noise. When someone wants you lost in the details, it's because the truth is hidden beneath them. A truthful person stays consistent even when pressured. A liar shifts the story the moment the pressure increases. A powerful sign of truth is consistency, not perfection, just steady, grounded consistency. People telling the truth don't contradict themselves based on who they're talking to. Their story doesn't need adjustments or emotional reinforcements, but lies adapt constantly. The manipulator must modify their narrative depending on who is questioning them, what they know, and how much time has passed. Lies evolve not to become more accurate, but to stay alive. Every lie needs energy, it needs performance, it needs emotional framing, it needs you to doubt yourself, and it needs you to remain focused on how you feel instead of what you see. The more emotionally entangled you become, the less likely you are to notice the subtle signs of deception. Manipulators rely on this. They need you overwhelmed, flustered, defensive, apologetic, or guilty. Because in those states, you're easier to steer. Truth, in contrast, needs nothing from you. It doesn't need your guilt, your belief, your approval, your silence, or your emotional confusion. It can stand on its own, calm and unbothered. Lies can't do that. Lies must constantly be fed, supported, defended, and emotionally packaged in a way that keeps you from looking too closely. That is why persuasion, guilt, and emotional pressure are the fingerprints of manipulation, not honesty.